Welcome to Know Your Candidate podcast. This is an opportunity for candidates from across Tauranga City wards to tell their stories, their experiences, their reasonings in their own words. A format which gives them more than the public debates and profiles that you've seen already. An opportunity for the voter, the ratepayer, future resident to get to know who you want leading the city and, importantly, are they capable of doing so? Anne Pankhurst, a previous business owner, councillor and political junkie, will find out more why the candidates want to run, where they have come from, what they're going to do. So let's not wait anymore. Let's go.
Kia ora, Ria. How are you?
Oh, that's a
Fantastic.
loaded question. That's a loaded question right now, Anne.
So we're introducing Ria Hall, who is candidate for Papamoa ward and mayoral candidate. And welcome to the Know Your Candidate podcast series. Our format today is to take the opportunity for a longer, more conversational approach so that you, the candidate, can speak and share your own aspirations for the city. We'll take about 20 to 30 minutes and you'll be answering prepared questions that you have no idea what they are. But the most important aspect for us and for everyone is that you tell everyone to vote, especially in your demographic.
Yeah, awesome.
And that democracy works when we all engage,
Yes.
actively take part, learn about your candidates, understand what is important to us for the future of the city. So remember to follow Know Your Candidate, to also put it through your own databases and to follow us on thepodhub.com. So Ria, can you give us a little rundown on yourself? Who are you? Children, no children? What have you done in the past? Give us that brief on yourself.
Yeah, kia ora, Anne, and thank you to the Pod Hub for inviting me along. I am really, this is awesome. It's great to be in this kind of format and to be able to speak candidly about the reasons why I'm running and the vision that I have for our beautiful city. I born and bred in Tauranga, born some 41 years ago, went to school in Maunga Tapu School, Tauranga Intermediate and Tauranga Girls College. My parents are both from Tauranga as well. I whakapapa to all the iwi across Tauranga Moana. I have had a illustrious is the word of the day that I'm going to use, career in the arts, where I've been involved in singing, songwriting, performance, mentorship, curation over a course of 20 years. And I've managed to collaborate with some of the greatest minds, hearts, and voices of my generation in music. I have a background in the arts, obviously. I was a public servant for a time down in Wellington, so I know the machinery of public servant life and reporting to ministers. That was in my 20s. In my 30s, I carried on with my music. I have a degree in political science out of the University of Waikato. I'm completing my Masters of Regional Development through the University of Auckland currently. I have a background in governance. I've been a governor since I was in my early 30s. I sat on the board for 2 terms of the New Zealand Music Commission, where we dealt with millions of taxpayer-funded dollars, advocating and distributing to a number of spaces in the music sector across New Zealand. I also sit on 2 other national arts boards currently. I'm a mama, most importantly. I should have actually said that first. I'm a mother of 3 young children aged 5, 3, and 2. My big boy just started this year at Maunga Tapu School, and my 2 babies attend Best Start Ngātai Road. And I just want to give a shout out to all of the parents who are putting their hands up for any form of candidacy, whether it be at a councillor level or mayoralty, and our grandparents. Man, it's a big task and it's a big ask. So I commend everyone for being so bold and so brave to put their hats in the ring.
Thank you, because I agree entirely with that statement. And where would we be without our carers, like our grandparents? It's terribly important. So you've actually answered the first question I was going to ask, which was, have you had previous governance experience and what was the budget? So you've answered that one, so I won't waste time on that one. The next question I'd quite like to ask is, have you had experience of working in TCC or with TCC? And if so, what was that?
Yeah, great question. Well, currently in my professional capacity, I didn't actually say this before, but I'm in communications, so I'm the Chief Communications Officer for Mangatawa Papamoa Blocks Incorporation. And as an organisation, we've had many dealings over a long period of time with council. But personally, I haven't worked in council, but in my arts, with my arts hat on, for a time there, I was the artistic director of the Tauranga Arts Festival. But then I found out I was quite heavily pregnant with my second child along the way, so I had to forego that role. But in that period of time that I was sitting at the helm of the Arts Festival, we were highly engaged and had to be highly engaged with the council. So direct meetings with the mayor, line of sight to the chief executive, because we needed to advocate fiercely for our festival, particularly for space and for funds. So I understand the cogs of the organisation.
That's give or take what I was hoping you'd say. So following on from that, what do you consider the main role of the mayor and the councillors of a city to be? What do you consider fundamentally they are there to do?
You know what, that's a great question. And I haven't actually been asked that question to date since I put my hat in the ring some 6 weeks ago. At the core of the mahi, and I believe fundamentally, that we need to build good collegial relationships across the board. We need to be able to, as councillors and as the mayor, as councillors have good collegiality and respect around the table. We need to actually get along with each other in order to build consensus and push anything across the line. And the mayor needs to have the temperament, the experience, and the buy-in from his or her councillors in order to kind of guide us forward into a direction that we are at the table happy with. And we know that out there, our constituents will be happy with. Now, of course, that's neither here nor there. Some constituents will be happy with decisions and some won't. But I think having the bigger picture of what's at stake for Tauranga should also sit at the forefront of the minds of both councillors and the mayor.
And where do you see the mayor's role in Wellington? Or what do you see as the mayor's role in Wellington?
Fundamental, Anne. I think the mayor should be advocating fiercely with ministers and with senior officials in the mayoral capacity as often as possible. From what I understand, there hasn't been a lot of that style of advocating with central government in Wellington. So I would be expecting the mayor, whomever that is, to be building good collegial relationships with both ministers and senior officials in Wellington, so that Tauranga, as you know, Anne, has been seriously underlooked, undervalued, underfunded. So now we have an opportunity as a mayoral candidate or as the mayor that steps in, they definitely should be advocating for our city fiercely.
So the skill set I would really love to drill down on is the ability and experience in managing complex commercial and political environments. And you've kind of alluded to previous political environments, but there's also a very strong commercial environment. And I'm just wondering what skills and ability you bring to that.
I think for me, it's all about the brokering of relationships. And you'll hear me across the course of any interview that I do or any debate that I participate in. I know that relationships are key to build, are the key building blocks to any good governance practice, to any good commercial decisions being made. So while I don't have an extensive background in the commercial space, what I do have is an extensive background in understanding and communicating effectively with people to broker good relationships and to get the best deal that I possibly, in all of my might, can muster. So I bring a range of skill sets from the communication space that I believe have been lacking in the leadership space at council, particularly from a mayor and councillor perspective. So I'll be going in with that kind of armory at the ready. Fundamental to that, I believe that leaning in on experience around the table is also really crucial. What that does is that when you go sideways as well, that builds more of a cohesive relationship with your people around the table, and trust. You can lean in on people who have more of a skill set that you might, because I'm not going to come in saying I've got all of these things and I've got all of that, because that's just not the case. It takes the team in order to make good moves and good decisions. But I do know that sitting at the helm, the mayor has the responsibility on his or her shoulders to be able to bear the brunt of that and the burden, well, not the burden, but the responsibility of that. And I know my capacities and my strengths, and I know my weaknesses and my limitations. So I think being really aware of all of that is fundamental to good leadership and good communication. So that's what I'll be bringing to the helm.
Right. So if funding for the huge infrastructure spend is one of the biggest challenges and issues facing the city,
Mhm.
what would your solution to some of those be? Because it's at the moment it sits largely in either central government or the ratepayer.
Yeah, that's correct. Now, at the core of it, I do, looking at the long-term plan, I do agree with the rates distribution. So the industrial sector taking a portion of rates, commercial sector taking a portion of the rates, and obviously the residential sector taking a portion of the rates too, just to get a bit more of a bit more of a realistic split amongst our communities. In terms of infrastructure, I think that we need to start thinking about how we might be able to use our shared resources across councils, because no one council can shoulder the full burden of improving and increasing our infrastructure capacity. So I think that that's a really fundamental move that needs to be made. And at the minute, ourselves and the Western Bay Plenty Council don't have the full capacity to be able to fund each other in that space. So we'd need to look, by and large, further afield in order to get that really robust, fit for purpose, bang for buck scenario happening here in Tauranga. When I mean bang for buck, I don't mean it in a cheap sense. I mean it in the sense that it'll work for us and it will be fit for purpose. But we just need to explore our options further in that space.
So how do you feel about amalgamation?
Yeah, I think in some capacities there's definitely a need for shared services. I think that's a larger conversation, by and large, that needs to be had. And I am willing to have those conversations because we are in a position where we don't have the capacity, we don't have the means to be able to fund ourselves. Currently, as Andrew Kai always tends to say, I'll lean into his narrative, Tauranga can't currently afford itself, and I definitely agree with that. So we need to explore all ways in order to try and see where we can pull levers. And I'm interested further in the relationships with central government as well, really brokering good, strong relationships with ministers in order to get a good city deal for us so that we have the basics. Good infrastructure is a basic necessity of a city, yet we do not have that in Tauranga. So that's a big ticket item. That's one of the things that's at the top of my list.
So another question, given that you govern at large, how do you see the collective action when it's not what you think your particular ward ratepayers, or some of them, will consider? They won't be very happy about it. How do you manage that conflict? Because you've had to govern at large and make a decision at large.
Yeah, I think those are continued conversations that will need to occur. I don't mind if there's some toing and froing that occurs. I think that that's part of a good democracy, is being able to go back to your constituents, present the findings, and then go back to council and renegotiate and go through a period of continuing to discuss what the wants versus the needs. And there will have to come a time where a decision has to be made, but I do think it is important to bring constituents along because it is about them, and we must remind ourselves at all times that it is the community and the people that are at the forefront of all of these decisions. And so to broker trust with them means bringing them always along on the journey and not leaving them behind. So yeah, it's a delicate balance. But I believe that I have good temperament in order to broker and come up with solutions. And I'm really solutions focused as well. And I'm not hell bent on what's occurred in the past. I think what's occurred in the past are really good learnings for us moving forward into this new iteration of council. And the occurrences of the past really set us up to do things so much differently. And that's what I'm really excited about.
So I'm just interested in your reaction to the view that Tauranga is a critical part of New Zealand Inc. So we have to think more nationally than locally because of what happens here matters. So I'm just interested in your view on that.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that there's space for us to enjoy our localism. Localism is incredibly important, especially in a place like Tauranga. We're the 5th largest city in Aotearoa. We need to start thinking like we are as well, believing that we are a city and continue to progress forward as a city. But yes, there is that national kind of broader perspective that needs to be taken as well. And it's critical that the role of mayor and councillors is to think on that broader spectrum as well, while keeping in mind our localism and our regionalism, because that's who we are at the coalface. But yeah, it's about having a really good balance of perspectives and being able to really work to our fullest extent to realise those perspectives, whether that's at a national level or a local level.
So I'm just another question: how are you going to manage multiple competing interests such as reasonable rates, new funding models, infrastructure deficit and debt, and how will you choose between investing in growth versus rate relief?
Yeah, again, it's a fine line. There's a fine balance to be struck. And while I am a progressive myself, I believe that in forward momentum and progressing our city. I don't believe in progressing our city at risk of running further and further into debt. I think it's about being really realistic with where we are at, the wants versus the needs. And I know that the big ticket items need to be sorted in the first instance. Our housing market is we don't have any housing available. There's no greenfield land, and infrastructure is abysmal. So it's about making that fit for purpose while keeping rates at a reduced level. I won't say to people that rates will not increase, because I don't think that that's a good byline to offer our community. I think the way in which everything is communicated, though, needs to be better with our community, so that they know exactly what is going on, because that means full accountability. We must be accountable through clear communication with our communities and with our constituents, because then we get buy-in and then we build trust. And you and I both know that by and large trust hasn't been there for some time, particularly that we've had commissioners. We haven't had an elected council for a number of years now. So we're almost starting again, and we're almost at operating off a clean slate. But I believe that with really good discussion, really good governance around the table, robust kōrero, and some clear parameters to which we work, I believe that we'll get our city moving. Maybe not in 4 years. It's definitely longer than that. It's going to take, for a couple of terms for things to be fully realised. And I'd like to think that our communities are much more smarter than what people might give them credit for, but they know that that's going to be the case. And so, yeah, I'm ready for it. I'm energized, and I want to help the city progress that way.
So there's a couple of things I want to just pick up on what you've said. The first is communication, and you've talked about that, communication with the community. So have you got an idea of what a communication and engagement model might be that you do engage, or is it just hoping like hell?
Oh no, there's no hope attached to it. We almost co-design, actually. I would like to be involved in that. I know there's a delineation between, governance and ops, and you don't want to cross and muddy the proverbial waters. But I think that communication is, it should be a fundamental part of our policy settings, and we should be really thinking about how often and when we communicate with our whānau, with our constituents, to get good buy-in, the language that we're using, you know, who are we wanting to target, what are we doing, so that there's no, you know, there's no dissent in the community, or it starts to shift. So I think that that's fundamental to this next council moving forward, is that there is a good, clear communication strategy that is deployed to bring 161,000 people on board.
Yes, and growing.
And growing, that's right. I think in the next 10 years, Anne, Tauranga is going to be the same size as Wellington.
Yes.
So I've always got that at the forefront of my thinking too. I know that we are an ever expanding city, that we don't have the current infrastructure set up to support. So yeah, it's going to
On
be,
one hand, growth is great, and on the other, it's vastly painful.
correct.
So one of the questions I'm asking the mayoral candidates is, what experience do you have of managing a diverse team to deliver outcomes, given that of the all of the councils, you're not their boss, you're their leader.
Yes.
You can't tell people what to do, say, or think. And I'm just wondering what experience you have of managing quite a diverse team.
That's a great question. Well, I've been involved over the years with multiple projects, both in New Zealand and overseas, that has required strong project management and good selection of team players as well. So again, for me, it will always come down to two things, Anne. One, relationships, and two, communication. I think that as long as clear outcomes, outputs, KPIs are deployed, and whomever is sitting at the helm is clear, is open, is able to direct and guide the councillors around the table, and have direct line of sight, because the relationship with the chief executive is obviously going to be crucial in this instance, especially in this iteration of council. That relationship is like, for me, like mother and daughter, myself and my girl. It's everything in order to make things move forward smoothly, well, in a direction that we would expect Tauranga to move into as a council. So those are the key outputs and outcomes that I'll be focusing on, is building good collegiality, both at a councillor and mayoral level. And obviously, should I be successful in the mayoralty bid, my relationship with the chief executive is fundamental to everything that occurs within council. So I'll be focusing a lot on those kind of outputs and outcomes.
And potentially, the council will be a lot of first termers.
Yeah.
You know, that have never done it before, which in and of itself is quite a challenge. And you'll be one of them.
Correct.
With luck, not making any assumptions. How do you think the chief executive can manage a whole group of new people who are sitting there blinking in amazement at how the complexity of the organisation they're going into? How do you think that can be dealt with and managed well?
Well, again, I think it's about, there will be a period of a team build. There'll be a period where there will need to be some kind of, well, handover of responsibilities, due diligence taken in terms of induction, but really getting down to the nuts and bolts of building the relationship with the chief executive. Because as you and I know, the chief executive then filters down all the jobs and responsibilities and of the outputs and outcomes to the rest of the staff and the organization. So it's, in that respect, it's very much a top-down method. But when it comes to dealing with our communities, my hope is that everything will stay at a community up level. So I'm anticipating a hybrid model occurring, so top down from community upwards to the mayor, and in terms of the in-house and council, top down from the mayor down to the chief executive. So that kind of that balance occurring, so that there's no ructions, or there's it's a little bit more of an even keel in terms of the playing field. But I also feel like there'll need to be a consistent and constant KPIs from the chief executive with the mayor and the councillors, but things will need to be really, really structured in terms of that relationship. So yeah, I guess you won't really know until you get in there, but I think that building that relationship is crucial to progressing the city forward.
Well, Ria, it's been a fantastic, and it's gone really quickly, and
It has.
congratulations for standing, and thank you very much. And remember to make everyone vote. It's the most
Yes.
critical part.
Yes,
Share
absolutely.
this link when we finish it early next week with your own networks and your own social media campaign, and follow us on thepodhub.com. And thank you again for an excellent interview, and best of luck for the future.
Amazing. Kia ora, Anne, and thanks
Kia
for
ora. Thank
Kia ora.
you.
Tune in to the next episode of Know Your Candidate to be informed on who you want to run your city. Got feedback and like to comment your thoughts on the episode? Connect with Know Your Candidate on social. This has been the podhub.com experience. Check out thepodhub.com for other podcasts and how you can even do your own.